was nearly a year ago when Disney and now former CEO Bob Chapek decided that they were going to go to war with the state of Florida. All over the parental rights and education bill, which has recently been signed into law, they decided that they would fight not only the government in Florida, but also families in Florida, because Disney thought it was higher on their priority list to make sure that kindergartners would be sexualized by teachers. That's what Disney was fighting for. Ron DeSantis warned them, it's not going to end well if you do this. If you go to war with the state of Florida over this, it will not go well, and it didn't go well. Here we are a year later. Bob Chapek ended up losing his job in large part because of this controversy. Disney stock had its worst year in 50 years, and Disney's continuing to bleed. And now things officially just got even worse for them. Ron DeSantis signs legislation officially ending Disney's self-governing status. And if you weren't really following along, if you didn't really know what this is, Disney has had a leg up in Florida for decades and decades. They have special privileges because when they were first building Disney World, they really wouldn't have been able to do it with some of the regulations that were in place. So they got an advantage. They got to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. All of that is changing. Now Disney's going to be just like every other entity, every other business in the state of Florida. Ron DeSantis, I signed legislation to end Disney's self-governing status and place the area in state receivership, appointed 5 members to a state control board. Disney's no longer has its own government and will live under the same laws as everyone else and pay their taxes. They're going to be treated like Universal. They're going to be treated like SeaWorld. They'll be treated like every other entity. No longer will they have all these advantages.
Today, the corporate kingdom finally comes to an end. There's a new sheriff in town, and accountability will be the order of the day.
Now, when he announced that he was going to do this, a lot of people said, oh, it'll never happen. This will never happen. He'll never get it done. Well, it ends up getting done. And all of this damage has been done to Disney in large part because they decided to get involved in this controversy. And something else very interesting came out today. Just like we saw when Bob Chapek came out in early March and said, you know, we respect inclusion, but we don't really want to get involved in a political war. And then just a few days later came out and said, you know what? I'm going to bend the knee to the woke mob. I'm going to bend over for the LGBTQ plus activists. We're learning from Ron DeSantis that Ron DeSantis told him exactly what would happen. He warned him not to give into the woke mob, not to cave to the woke mob. But Bob Chapek did that, and at the end of the day, it may or may not have cost him his job. DeSantis told ex-Disney CEO Bob Chapek to stay out of Florida's fight over the, quote, don't say gay bill. I love how all these headlines are still going with the don't say gay bill. That's not what it is. There's nowhere in the legislation. It's the parental rights in education bill, which is now law. Here's the advice DeSantis gave Disney's CEO before the company caved to the woke mob. The day Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the bill stripping Disney World's self-governing status, an excerpt from his forthcoming book, The Courage to Be Free, reveals the advice the Republican leader gave to Disney since ousted CEO Bob Chapek that could have saved him a lot of trouble and maybe even his job. As the controversy over the parental rights and education bill was coming to a head, Bob Chapek called me. He didn't want Disney to get involved, but he was getting a lot of pressure to weigh in against the bill. And remember this, we talked about this. March 7th is the date of this article on Bounding into Comics. Disney CEO Bob Chapek says the company is a force for inclusion, but doesn't want it to become a political football. What did we see a few days after that? Disney CEO Bob Chapek fully aligns company with LGBTQ plus agenda, declares he'll be an outspoken champion for the community. Certainly didn't end well. You probably should have listened to Ron DeSantis. Correctly, DeSantis recounts his advice to Chapek that included saying there would be limited periods of outrage from the woke mob when the bill passed Florida's legislature, and again when DeSantis signed the bill, saying it would just be 48 hours of outrage and then it would be mostly online. Here's the quote. Then there will be some new outrage that the woke mob will focus on, and people will forget about this issue. DeSantis also writes in the advice he gave Chapek, especially considering the outrage is directed at the political media narrative, not the actual text of the legislation itself. So the governor said, hey, just ignore it. Like, don't give in to any of this pressure. You don't need to get involved in this. If you get involved, it will be bad for you. Ignore the woke mob. Ignore these people. They're a small minority of people. They do not matter. Then move on to something else. Well, instead, that's not what happened. Instead, Bob Chapek decided to bend the knee, give in to the woke activists within Disney and even outside of Disney, and we all saw what happened. It was a disaster. And now, officially, Ron DeSantis has signed this legislation ending the self-governing status for Disney, just like he said he would. The past year has been a complete and total disaster for Disney, and based on the box office, based on the streaming, it's not looking to get any better. But you can really trace a lot of this back to this decision nearly a year ago, and in that time, everything has been downhill for them. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.